Hey guys, Jake Carlson here, host of the Modern Leadership Podcast. Are you ready to focus on amplifying your leadership superpowers? Let's go! Welcome, my friends, to another exciting, and I do mean exciting, episode of the Modern Leadership Podcast. I've been working overtime lately, meeting with and sitting down with some of the most incredible leaders, and guess what? They're all out there doing incredible things. Today, I want to introduce you to one of these incredible world-changing leaders. I think you're really going to enjoy my guest, Mary Hyatt. But first, a little background. Hailing from the heart of country music in Nashville, she is a presidential diamond wellness advocate at doTERRA Essential Oils and a personal life and wellness coach, where she coaches achievers to wake up, find their voice, and become fully alive. Mary is on a quest to feel alive, to live a life full of gratitude, joy, authenticity, abundance in body, mind, and soul. Let me just stop for a second. Don't you just love that? Full and complete life of joy. Sign me up. Mary believes that every person has the ability to create the life that they love. She does a Facebook Live every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Central Time, where she helps her viewers fall back in love with themselves and believe in their potential. Wow, Mary, that's a mouthful. You're making the world a happier, healthier place. Welcome to Modern Leadership. How are you doing today?
Oh my gosh, so fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And it's so funny hearing you read that bio. I'm like, that sounds pretty great. I like that life. You have a great way of presenting that. It sounds awesome.
Well, and you know, I've wanted to get you on the show because the enthusiasm, the passion, the happiness, the joy, as you talk about, just radiates from your voice. And you know, there's some people out there that have this joy in their hearts, but it never gets out to the rest of us. And there's others, Mary, like yourself, that are just so happy and just excited about life. And so I'm really looking forward to talking about the things that we have to talk about today. But before we get too deep into it, did I miss anything in the bio? I know we talked a little bit about your business life. How about your personal life?
Yeah, I think for me, the personal side of things is that I really do love life. For me, I enjoy traveling. I like to change it up and get a lot of variety in my life. So I am born and raised in the South, which has wonderful benefits. And as you can imagine, some challenges, some small-mindedness, but Nashville is such an awesome place to live. I love it. I live here with my boyfriend, and we just have such a great life doing all kinds of stuff outdoors and going to coffee shops every day and pounding out the work that we love. And it's really awesome.
Now, one of the things that when we talk to people like yourself that are in the coaching world, that are out there life coaching and talking with different clients every day, one of the things that comes to mind is, you know, is this an easy life that it's easy to be happy with, or are there struggles and there are times of challenge and you got to kind of push through them? And the reason I ask this question is because my wife and I recently had this conversation about online business and about coaching businesses and about how hard they really are and getting the word out to the rest of the world that it really is a difficult business. And so how does that sound?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I sort of fell into life coaching and fell into my business with doTERRA just by way of my own journey and following my passion. And for me, nobody ever really tells you how challenging it is to be an entrepreneur. I think we glorify it often, and it seems just really attractive. You know, follow your heart and follow your passion and follow your dreams, and everything will just click along fine. And I know for me, there is so much joy and there is so much gratification in owning my own business and getting to work with successful entrepreneurs and help them succeed and become, you know, more in love with their life. But like you just said, Jake, I mean, it's a challenge. I mean, there is some real work involved. And I think once you enter into that space where you no longer are living the 9 to 5 and you have to create your own routine, you have to create your own schedule, you have to decide what's important and what doesn't matter. You have to decide how to brand yourself and show up in this world in a way where people can connect to you, or in a way where people want to purchase what it is that you're selling, no matter what that is. And for me, I didn't even graduate college. So the idea of building that by myself and learning about leadership and guiding people was very foreign to me when I began. And there is a massive learning curve for sure. But I think the opportunity for the reward and the freedom that you can create is incredibly attractive to people. And I know that for me, being somebody who really values my freedom and values the ability to sort of make it up as I go and have the ability to get creative and use my own skill set in any way that I want to, I love it. I mean, it is challenging. I feel like every other day I am breaking down and facing my demons and getting into my fears and having to challenge those voices in your head that say, hey, you're not good enough. Who are you, to think that you could actually do this? And I think to be an entrepreneur and to pursue some of the things, you've got to be willing to wrestle your demons.
And so I agree with this. And being an entrepreneur, not easy, although a lot of times it's glamorized through the media and also even us as entrepreneurs. Sometimes when we're talking to our friends, I was just in a conversation and, we like to tell the good stories and the happy stories. But do you think that entrepreneurship, this mindset that you're talking about, where you have to be able to go with the ups and downs, where you have to be disciplined to focus your time and your attention and your energies, is this something that can be learned? Is it something that you're born with? Do you have to have kind of an inclination towards it to make it successful? Or can anybody be an entrepreneur?
I think that's such a great question because as you were asking, I was thinking, okay, what do I really believe about this? I think that anybody can do it for sure. I do think, however, it's easier for some types of personalities. There are all different kinds of personalities. I am like a personality test freak. I feel like I take them all. I love them. I get obsessed with different ones. And so I think based on your natural God-given strengths, I think based on your inclination for assessing risk and taking risk, or your need for certainty or your desire for uncertainty, there's a lot of variables in there that I think would make being an entrepreneur easier and more exciting. Like I know for me, anytime that I am given a challenge, I love that. Like I really get off on that. I get excited about it. I have learned to befriend my fear and that discomfort, and that actually energizes me. It motivates me, that ability to kind of come up with a solution and strategize and creatively make something out of nothing. I think that's inherent to my personality, but there's so many different things in business that I have had to learn, that I've had to go outside of myself and ask people how to do X, Y, Z. And so I think there are a lot of the skills that can be learned that will work towards your advantage. But I think there is kind of a certain personality that I see that tends to be more successful in that role as an entrepreneur.
Well, and I think this is a very fascinating conversation because as you were talking through that, some of my thoughts were, nobody is born an entrepreneur. Certainly people are born with different strengths and different weaknesses. And some of those strengths are going to make this part of being an entrepreneur easier. Some of your weaknesses are going to make this part of being an entrepreneur harder. And because we're all unique, we're all individuals, we all have different strengths and weaknesses. Some parts of entrepreneurship are going to come easier to others. But all in all, we probably all have some of the skills necessary to be successful while developing and working on some of the other skills. And as you've gone around and worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I know I've seen some of your client lists, you work with some big names, some great people out there that are doing amazing world-changing things. Are you seeing a common struggle that they're having, or does everybody have their own unique battles to fight?
I really think they are unique. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, whether this is business or life, and it shows up in both places, whether you're male, whether you're female, that there's two common fears that I see pop up over and over again. And those two common fears for a woman are going to be, am I enough? And am I lovable? For a man, I think if there's one extra one, or maybe you could replace one of those with, do I have what it takes? And those core questions to me are the foundation for every struggle, the foundation for every just feeling inadequate, feeling like you're not worthy, feeling like you can't make it happen. And every time I work with a client, it peels back. If you're peeling back the layers of the onion, it always comes back to those core fears. Am I enough? Am I lovable? Do I have what it takes? And it doesn't matter if you are running a $10 million business, a $500,000 business, those core fears are going to be the same. And once we can get in and address those issues to allow somebody to realize how worthy they are as a human being outside of what they achieve. And that's kind of an interesting thing because I'm a high achiever, my clients are high achievers, and it's so easy to begin to identify our sense of self-worth by what it is that we accomplish, what it is that we achieve. And what happens with that is you end up on this crazy hamster wheel of doing more that leads my clients usually to a state of burnout. And they get to the place where they're unfulfilled in their life, they're unhappy, their relationships suck, they may be making a lot of money, or they may have great connections, but that's really all they have to show for it. And at the end of the day, they're still unhappy because they're trying to earn love. They're trying to earn their sense of self-worth. And so for me, one of my core messages to people is this idea that I am lovable just because I breathe, which is involuntary. You cannot earn that. You can't try. You breathe involuntarily, and that you are incredibly lovable at this moment. And for people who are achievers like myself, I will always want to achieve. I am a go-getter. I'm like a boss babe. Let's do it. And I find joy out of that. I really enjoy that. However, I know that that's not dependent on whether I'm lovable or not. And that takes so much pressure off of the table and allows me to take a fresh look at my business. I can approach it with passion, with purpose, with meaning, rather than that hustle, earn love. That's kind of the undercurrent so often.
Well, and that makes sense. When you say it, it resonates with me. And by the way, I can see this in myself, as a high achiever myself and working so hard. And sometimes when you work so hard and you spend so many hours, that starts to become your identity and you start to lose the other parts of your identity. You're just that worker. But where do you start this process of breaking this down? You can say to somebody, Jake, you are a great person. You're doing great things. People love you for who you are. And I can hear you, but I need to go a step further. I need to believe you. And so how do we do that? Take it from I hear you to I believe you.
Yeah. So one of the examples that I use is, let's talk about, for me, my clients are females, are women. So I use this example, which may not be, great for men, but you can imagine this if you're a father. So let's say that this baby is born and a mother has this beautiful child who is born into the world, and this little baby, all they're doing is crying, nursing, and pooping in their diaper. Like, they're not contributing anything to the world. They're not doing anything. They're just simply alive. They just simply exist. And, in a healthy relationship, the mother and the father just love this baby. I mean, they just look at this baby with so much adoration and they cry because they love this baby so much. But the baby isn't doing anything, but that baby is completely lovable. Now, fast forward, what if the mother or the father decided to wait and love the baby until the baby got up and started taking its first steps? There wasn't any love for when the baby tried to walk and would fall down on its butt. It wouldn't have any love for a baby who took a couple steps and then dropped down to their knees, and certainly not when it was crawling or rolling over, only when the baby was perfectly walking. Or what if the love was withheld until the baby, the toddler, started to speak in full sentences? So, with the baby, there's that, goo goo, gaga, absolute gibberish that's taking place. And the mother and the father gave no love to that baby while it was learning how to speak. And as it was talking gibberish and clamoring on about this or that, there was still no love until it could actually, have a full grammatically correct sentence. And, obviously it's like, no, that's crazy. Like, how could you withhold love for a baby until they achieved something, until they performed, until they did something perfectly? And so often what's crazy is that is what we do for ourselves. We withhold our own love for ourselves, our own acceptance, our own praise for ourselves until we feel like we have showed up at the finish line. And obviously that's going to create a really dysfunctional relationship. That creates a lot of shame. That creates a lot of embarrassment. That creates a lot of guilt and a incredible pressure to strive towards perfection. So for me, coming to the place where you believe that, it's like, remember a time when you were loved outside of what you did. Remember a time when you were lovable, when you didn't have to earn it. And I think that memory is really helpful to get to the place of the belief, like, yeah, right, I was lovable then and I wasn't doing anything. And another piece to this puzzle, a lot of times people will say, well, who am I outside of my work? Like, I remember, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, Jake, but I've had people say, they'll be like, okay, well, what are your hobbies? And I'm like, well, God, work, and more work. I mean, I just feel like for so long, I really didn't do anything but eat and work, and maybe occasionally hang out with a friend, but I certainly didn't have any interests or hobbies. And that was a real wake-up call for me to begin to discover the other facets of who I am. I'm not just a human doing, I am a human being. So how am I being in this world? What is the be part of who I am outside of my work? And that was a very sobering moment for me. And I sort of had to go on an exploration of discovering more of what made me an entire human being.
And I love this example that you gave, and it actually resonates very well, I think, with a lot of the audience here, of thinking of our lives kind of like we look at a baby. And I think you're absolutely right. Even in our businesses, I think sometimes we treat our businesses not like a baby like we should, but we treat them like this. They should be perfect today and not this progression or this evolution or this growth where, as an entrepreneur, I'm starting something new. I'm trying to do something unique and original. And sometimes that's going to come out and be perfect. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. People are going to smile, pat me on the back, and give me accolades. Other times, it's going to flop big time. And that's part of the growth process. That's the part of being a baby and standing up and then falling down and being picked back up. But looking at your business and your life, your entrepreneurship, or your career in this progression and realizing that there is growth and development that'll happen.
It's always awkward. I mean, I think anytime you start something new, it's incredibly awkward. And like you said, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And all of that is fantastic feedback. And I just keep thinking, one of the things I say all the time is I'm just getting started. Like, I'm just warming up. And I mean, I have a 7-figure business that I love and cherish. I have built over the years. And in my mind, I still think of my business as a toddler. And there's so much grace for a toddler. There's so much experimenting. There's so much curiosity. There's so much just a willingness to try things on, to see if they fit, to see if it will work, and adjust as needed. And there has to be that fluidity. There has to be that flexibility to go, all right, it's not going to come out perfect usually the first time, but that doesn't mean failure. And that's a big distinction, is trying something out, it doesn't work. It doesn't mean that you failed and that you should give up. It's simply feedback, which is the most important thing in your business.
If you're perfect in all that you're doing, you're not pushing yourself hard enough, or you're pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, you're not growing. If you're good at everything that you do, you're not evolving and taking your business to what we would call the next level. So I love that. I want to shift gears now and talk a little bit about some stuff that I found on your website that really resonated with me. I thought it was very fun to look at. One of them is your I believes. And you got a page on your website that has these 24 I believe statements. And I wanted to get a little background of how you put that together and what it means to you to have these I believe statements.
Okay, so this is kind of a fun thing. So for me, I am really big into beliefs, and absolutely fundamentally know that our results that we get in our business and in our life rewind always back to our thoughts and our beliefs that we have about the world. Our thoughts, our beliefs create emotion. They generate an emotion. And based out of that emotion, it allows us to take or not take certain action that then gives us the results in our life. And for me, as someone who wants to be successful and ultimately enjoy life and have a life that I can feel excited about and proud about, I know that I have to control my mind, that it always comes back to the mind. And growing up, I had a lot of limiting beliefs about the world, about myself, what I was capable of, and certainly about what life should be like. Life should be hard. You should struggle. You're not doing anything important unless it's difficult. You have to push through. Bad stuff's always going to happen. These were some of the beliefs that I held very deep to me. And what happens is depending on how we identify the world, we will go out and find proof for all of those things we believe. We'll seek ways to back up those beliefs. And what I realized eventually, and this is through a lot of reading and conferences and all kinds of coaching programs, is that all beliefs are subjective. We get to choose, which was awesome and incredibly liberating. That, okay, well, maybe the fact that someone believes that life is always going to be a struggle is subjective. What if I wanted to choose to believe something different? What if I actually did not want to believe that it was a struggle and I wanted to believe that life is easy? Well, based on that belief, I'm going to go search out and find the proof to back up that belief. And for me, I actually sat down one night and I asked myself, if I gave myself permission to believe anything about the world that I wanted to, that I know that would create and generate positive emotion, that would make me feel excited for life, that would give me confidence, that would help me to experience peace and joy, what would those beliefs be? And I gave myself complete, unfiltered permission to just write out whatever I wanted to believe, that even kind of sounded crazy. So this is what came from it. I got these 24 beliefs that I felt like, man, if I really gave myself permission to believe these 24 things, I couldn't help but have an amazing life. And I just sort of freeformed, started writing them out all down. And at the end, I was like, yep, that's awesome. And so here they are.
And I think it is really awesome. When I read through them, the process that you went through, the activity of getting them written down is so powerful and it'll propel you so far forward. I got to tell you, inject just a little bit of my own in this. You've got your I believes. I've got my immutable laws. And these are the 6 laws that every decision I make in my business goes through. And these are the immutable laws for me. Number 1, be different. Number 2, stop comparing. Number 3, simplify. Number 4, systematize. Number 5, hustle. And number 6, follow the plan. And as I look through those immutable laws, those are like my I believes. And I see it as kind of my vision statement or my vision for my company and for my life. And that's kind of when I read through your website and saw these I believes, I saw that as your vision for your life and your mission for your company.
I love those laws. Those are awesome. And I'm just cracking up because I'm like, that's such a guy way to, one word answers where if you go on my website, you'll see it's like an entire, flowery sentence, very feminine, which is great, but it's achieving the same purpose. There's really no wrong way to do this. It's just having those key phrases or those key words that keep bringing you back to kind of filter your life through and to say, is what I'm choosing to do, the decisions that I'm making, are those in line with my laws, or are those in line with my belief statements? Are they congruent? Are they aligned with who I really am and want to be and what I want my life and business to be about? If it's not about those things, if it doesn't align, throw it out and come back to center.
Perfect. Now, Selfdiscovery Peru retreat. So this is another page on your website. It jumped out to me. I love Peru, very excited about it. Opened up and I saw this self-discovery retreat and I said, I've got to talk to Mary about this and find out how you got this going, how it works, and just some background information of it.
Yeah. So I feel like I have a love affair with Peru. I went several years ago on a yoga retreat. And it ended up being this this journey that was very similar to the one that I'm leading, where we got to work with local shamans or local medicine men. And they took us around to the Sacred Valley outside of Cusco, Peru. And they took us around to all these different sacred sites. And the history of Peru is so rich and very mystical. And there is an incredible history of working with these shamans, and there's just a very deep spiritual energy that happens there. So I was going for this yoga retreat. We're working with these shamans, and there was just this massive shift that happened for me, where I finally got to hear my own voice. It was like everything became quiet, and I discovered who I really was. And I felt like and feel like Peru is a really supportive place for that to happen. And I've seen that happen over and over again. I've led 4 trips there already. And after my first trip, I was working with one of the guides who was on our trip. And he was telling me that he was a student for agriculture and for tourism. And I was like, oh my gosh, well, I started a farmer's market in Nashville where I live. And so we were talking about essentially local food and organic food. And he was telling me about a farm that his parents had that really at this point was only growing corn at the time. And one of the days that we were there, we got to spend a service day and go to several different local schools and see the issues that were presented there and how the local community was stepping in to help support. But there were all these gaps, one of which was the food, that they didn't have food up in the high altitudes of these mountains that was nourishing to the children. And so they were having a lot of issues with malnourishment. So Christian, my guy there, we started talking about what would it look like to shift the farm to cultivate fresh organic produce and distribute it to these schools in the mountains of Peru. So we were just like geeking out and getting super excited about it. He spoke very little English. I spoke very little Spanish. So it was kind of a hysterical, cryptic conversation. And it really was birthed from that first trip. So now I have a nonprofit there in Peru where we do this, where we have this farm and we get these kids amazing, just incredible, nutritious, fresh food. And I basically have designed a retreat that is around this desire that I have to just show up and be present in Peru. So I take people with me, about 10 to 12 people with me on this trip. We visit Machu Picchu, which is just incredible, one of the 7 wonders of the world. We are doing all these different ceremonies with the shamans, like a eucalyptus lined sweat lodge on one of the evenings where you just get all those impurities out of your body. We are doing some light meditation, some light yoga. It's a very cool trip because there's a lot of relaxation and adventure mixed together. And the space really is there to face your demons, get really clear on what's holding you back, release that, and come back home to yourself and really discover who you are and your purpose. So I'm leading a trip in September coming up at the end of September, beginning of October, that I'm just so thrilled about. I cannot wait. It's been a year since I've been there. And so I am ready.
That is incredible. And you talk about self-discovery. When you get out of your comfort zone, when you get out and see different cultures in different parts of the world, when you get out and serve and do things beyond yourself, it's amazing what you can find out about yourself. So I just love that. Now, I see our time's running a little bit slim here, Mary, and I do want to talk about 2 things before we jump off the line. One is I want to ask you about these top 5 questions that will change your life. We probably don't have time to go through them, but how about we hear the top 5 questions and then we just talk about one of them for a minute? And then I want to take you to our favorite part of the podcast, which is get to know Mary a little bit deeper.
Awesome. Yeah. So the question that I think that is, well, gosh, there's so many good ones, but okay, I'll go over them real quickly and I'll pick my favorite. So the first question, this is such a great question for business, is what is asking for my highest attention right now? And that is just a mindfulness practice to get really clear on what is your highest need in this moment and how can you answer that. Then this is kind of speaks to the I believe statements. I think this is probably one of the most powerful questions you can ever ask. And it's, do I really want to believe that? So we'll dig into that in a second. The next question is, what does this make possible? I love that question. It's from my mom. What does this make possible? When you're in something that feels challenging, when you get a moment of disappointment, discouragement, what does this make possible? What's the invitation? The fourth question is, what am I unwilling to feel? So much of our life struggle is based on the resistance of actually feeling what we're feeling in the moment. And the last question is, what overarching question rules my life? If you could boil your life down to one question, what would it be? What overarching question rules my life?
And I love that question. That one jumps out to me as it hits me when you go back to my immutable laws and you hear things like simplify and systematize, you know where my mind is going. I want to know what that one thing is. Back to you. Which one of these should we talk about today?
I think I guess I'm going to switch to the one that's, what does this make possible? Because I think one of my philosophies, I guess, that I live with, or something that I just keep coming back to over and over again, is this idea, and it comes from Tony Robbins, who is he's not a personal mentor, but I feel like he is. And he always says, life is happening for you, not to you. Life is happening for you, not to you. And so anytime something happens, like I had to go do an all-day retreat with one of my highest paying clients in California. And we had scheduled, an 8-hour day together. And the day before I show up, I completely lose my voice. And I am freaking out because she's flown me out there. She's already paid the money. I'm excited to work with her. It's a big name. And I'm thinking to myself, well, how am I going to actually make this happen? How am I going to pull this off? And so I had to slow down and ask myself, okay, this isn't by accident. This isn't just some crazy thing. And I get to control the meaning of this. I get to control how I interpret this. So what does this make possible? What does this open up? Where is the invitation here? And I realized that in that moment, it was going to allow her to begin to really trust her own intuition, her own voice, her own wisdom, and where she wasn't going to just sit here and rely on everything that I was saying, but where the tables could be turned. And I only was going to speak in a very, almost inaudible little voice when it was absolutely necessary. But I was going to be able to hold the space for her to work through it. And it ended up being one of the most powerful coaching days that I have had to this day. And she got incredible results after we worked through a whole strategy session together. And so always asking, when you find yourself in a predicament, what does this make possible?
And that story, I want the listeners to really take that to heart, because you didn't cancel your trip. You didn't mope around your hotel room and say, woe is me, life is falling apart. You didn't throw up your hands and say, I quit, this is it. You looked at it as an opportunity and you blessed your client. You took that relationship to the next level just by embracing this challenge, this opportunity for growth. And so I want the listeners to take that. Now, Mary, before I let you go, my very favorite part of this podcast is to run through a section I call Learning from Leaders, where we just ask rapid fire questions of you and get to know you just a little bit better. Sound like a plan?
Awesome. Sounds great.
Perfect. How about the book currently on your Kindle or bedside table?
You Are a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero.
How about the best movie ever made?
I'm going to go with You've Got Mail.
Oh, I think my wife probably agrees with you on that one. What is your leadership superpower?
Creating belonging.
Ooh, creating belonging. Please share a motivational quote or philosophy with us today.
So my favorite philosophy for business is high involvement, low attachment. So being really highly involved, putting all the energy into it, but releasing it and saying to yourself, this or something better, low attachment.
Boy, I wish we could have started the podcast with that question. I'd love to dive into that a little bit more. Maybe next time we have you on the podcast, we'll have to just start and talk about that one. But before we go, how about the best book ever written?
All right. For me, hands down, it is The Success Principles by Jack Canfield.
Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Yeah, baby.
All right. Wonderful. Well, what a great opportunity to sit down with you, learn from you. Great insight in a lot of different topics, Mary. Can't thank you enough for coming on the show. Before we sign off, would you leave us with a last bit of advice and how we can get in touch with you and learn more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess my last piece of advice for life and for business is to stop letting people decide how you should live your life or how you should build your business, and begin to develop that trust with yourself, with your own intuition, and to deeply believe and deeply recognize that you are fully resourceful and that what you have to bring to the table is unlike anyone else. And so really stop letting people decide that for you and strengthen your own voice ultimately. And for those of you who are wanting to connect with me further, you can go to my website, maryhyatt.com/ML. So for modern leadership. So maryhyatt.com/ML. And of course, absolutely follow me on my Facebook Live show every single Wednesday, 1:00 Central Time, where I get into issues that are really helpful for women. So if you are not a woman listening to this, but you are married, give this to your wives as something to listen to, because I really get into all of the struggles about vulnerability, authenticity, and helping women to begin to come back home to themselves.
And we didn't even get a chance to talk about authenticity, but it truly radiates in your voice how authentic you are, Mary. You brought the value. Sure appreciate your time. The last thing that you said really hit me. You decide for yourself, strengthen your own voice. Can't thank you enough for bringing your voice to the Modern Leadership Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. That was so fun. I loved it.
Well, my friends, what did you think of sitting down with Mary Hyatt? She is just full of enthusiasm. I really had a great time talking with her. I think she brings a lot of value in asking these 5 questions that will change your life. What is asking for my highest attention right now? Where is your attention going? Do I really want to believe that? Is that what you truly believe? What are your belief system? And as we talked through the podcast, we talked a lot about beliefs. Third, what does this make possible? What doors does this open? And that's the one that Mary delved into. And I really think she was right on the money when it comes to what opportunities does this problem, obstacle, trial, challenge, or even benefit open up for us? Fourth, what am I unwilling to feel? What is internally, emotionally, what are you attached to? And are you willing to let that go? And finally, what overarching question rules my life? Can you boil it down to a system or simplicity that will drive you towards success and opportunity? As I say every week, all the information that we talked about, including the 5 questions, Mary's book on the shelf, her mantra, her superpower, all of that information, including the link to her website with the special opportunity for the Modern Leadership listener, can all be found on the show notes for this episode, which is jakeacarlson.com/ML21 for Modern Leadership episode 21. And like I said, everything is there. Next week, we are going to be sitting down with another great guest. You're really going to enjoy our chat with Bobby Albert, who took over his father's company when his father passed away at the young age of 21, fresh out of college, while he was applying to law school, and how that changed the direction of his life, the success that he was able to bring his company to. Until then, I want to wish you the best of days, an even better life, and of course, stay awesome. See you next week. Thanks for listening to the Modern Leadership Podcast. You can find me on Facebook at Speaker Jake, on Twitter at Jake A. Carlson, and of course the website, jakeacarlson.com. See you there.